FWB wanted more. I ended things fearing commitment due to past scars. Now I'm questioning if losing her was my big mistake. About 6 months ago, I went out for drinks with some friends. One of them was Chris. Chris and I have known each other since middle school. We were never super close, but we were always good friends, if that makes sense, something easy, but not quite in the inner circle. That night, Chris got seriously wasted, and this other guy in our group, who was totally sober, started flirting with her in a way that made every warning bell in my brain go off. When we all started walking home, instead of heading to my own place, I lingered behind and ended up crashing on her couch, just to be sure she was safe. The next morning, over breakfast, Chris admitted she found me cute and really appreciated what I'd done the night before. She asked if I'd be up for a friends with benefits situation. Both of us had just gotten out of relationships, so it actually felt pretty natural. What surprised me most was that, beyond the physical part, the arrangement pulled us closer as actual friends. We started hanging out just for the hell of it, not just to hook up. The no staying the night rule had always been there for her. It made things feel less serious, more like just friends, but late last month, she straight up asked me to stay the night. She said, "I just really need someone to cuddle with tonight," and honestly, I didn't really hesitate or think anything of it. Now, whenever we spend time together that way, one of us ends up staying the night at the other's place, every time. She's also started making flirty comments toward me around our friends, breaking the rule we'd set to keep everything private. That's when things started to shift for me. I can't oversell this. Chris is absolutely beautiful, and not just in some generic way. I work around models for a living and, seriously, none of them hold a candle to her. Sometimes I honestly wonder why she picked me out of all people. She's also brilliant, driven, and kind, volunteering at a soup kitchen every week, of all things. I feel lucky just having gotten closer to her over the past 6 months. But here's the problem, I'm not sure my feelings match hers. I admire her so much. She's one of those rare people you consider yourself lucky to meet even once in a lifetime. But I know, without a doubt, that once feelings get involved, you can't really go back to being just friends with benefits. The idea of hurting her makes me sick. I'd rather be buried alive than cause her pain. But I don't know how to handle any of this. I kind of dreaded the conversation I knew I needed to have. Still, she's my best friend in the world, and there's very little I wouldn't do for her. I just didn't think I had romantic feelings for anyone anymore, not after how spectacularly badly my last relationship ended. That explosion had left me with trust issues and stuff that I still need to work through in therapy. I worried that telling her the truth could blow up our friendship, too. All these realizations hit me like a freight train, mostly when I was trying to sort out my feelings in the quiet of my apartment. I knew I couldn't leave it hanging forever. Chris was off work, so I decided it was time to rip off the band-aid. The conversation was brutal, even if it was brief. I told her right away that I wasn't in a good place to be in a relationship, with anyone, not just her. I told her I think the world of her, but that, right now, I'm not ready to be in anything committed. She understood, she said as much, and then she hung up. Just like that. I decided to give her some space, to let her reach out if she wanted. Now, I hate to admit it, but I think I might have made a tremendous mistake. I jumped straight into problem-solving mode, when maybe I should have given myself more time to process everything before I acted. I have to live with that now and just hope I didn't make a mistake that's impossible to fix. I should clarify something, though. While I talked privately about maybe wanting a relationship someday, I didn't say anything of the sort to Chris on the phone. I made it very clear that I wasn't ready for any relationship, because honestly, the scars from my last one aren't fully healed. But having sat with it, rethinking every detail, I'm devastated at the thought that I might have just lost Chris from my life entirely. I keep wondering if I made an enormous mistake not even giving the possibility of a real relationship with her a chance. After my last relationship, I'd essentially sworn off dating altogether. But Chris is truly something else. When I reread what I've written about her, I notice how I gush unconsciously, and every word is true. I'm a professional photographer, I see beauty for a living, and nobody I've ever worked with can compare to her. Sometimes, when I zone out, I see her eyes in my head, those captivating gray-blue eyes that just mesmerize me. I hear her dorky laugh when I'm editing photos at home. When I wake up, she's the person I want to talk to. I think I do have feelings for her, and maybe I just let fear, in the aftermath of my last relationship, get in the way. Update 1. After that first conversation, I picked up the phone and called her, nerves twisting in my stomach. I told her I suspected she had feelings for me. It was clear I was right, and I blurted out that I didn't have feelings for her and wasn't ready for a relationship. Panic just took over, the whole situation overwhelmed me. Thankfully, it was therapy day. I unloaded everything with my therapist, my deep-rooted fears about getting into another relationship, the reason I instinctively pushed her away so fast, and my regrets about how abruptly I reacted. The session really forced me to look inward and ask myself what I actually wanted, and face the possibility that maybe I'd sabotaged something good before it even began. After therapy, I just sat with my thoughts for a while. No phone, no distractions, just letting myself feel. Finally, I called her, but she didn't pick up. Feeling a bit desperate, I shot her a text, letting her know I wanted to talk and asking if she'd be willing to meet in person. She replied, open to meeting for dinner and hearing me out. That night over dinner, I laid it all out, the raw truth, how my last relationship messed me up, how that trauma made me panic the second I realized she had feelings, and how I acted without giving myself any time to process what I truly felt. Then I told her everything. That her voice is my favorite sound, that her smile is what I see when I close my eyes at night, and, most importantly, that if she could be patient with me, I wanted to try. To really give us a shot. Now, I'm taking her out on a proper date this weekend. Update 2. It's been just over 8 months since I first began this chapter of my life, and somehow, the two of us are still together, something I never would have dared to hope for after what I've been through. We moved in together about 2 months ago, which at first seemed a little fast, but after talking it through, we both realized it feels like we've been together for so much longer. In reality, for several months before we were official, it already felt like we were dating. There was just this natural ease between us I've never experienced before. When this all started, I was still reeling from an unbelievably toxic and abusive relationship. That mess left my ability to trust in tatters, and for a while, I genuinely doubted I'd ever be able to love or let someone love me again. Therapy has helped, of course, but I'd be lying if I said all the trust issues just vanished. They linger, even as I heal. But through it all, she's been patient and kind, just honestly a spectacular human being. For the first time ever, I don't feel like I'm performing or hiding. My walls are finally coming down. Shortly after she moved in, she started dropping hints, lots of them. She'd talk about weddings, starting a family, and doing it more and more often. I'm typically oblivious with these things, but even I couldn't miss it. So I finally just asked her outright if these were things she wanted, and what kind of timeline she'd imagined. I wanted to be absolutely sure that if I proposed, she'd say yes, so I might have overdone it a little, peppering her for confirmation until she said, "Yes, I want to marry you." She's someone who craves romance and grand gestures, but she also gets overwhelmed by big social scenes. I know her well enough to want to plan something that fits all those needs. We both agreed a fall wedding would be perfect. Luckily, my work as a photographer means I know a lot of people in the wedding industry, so as long as I can pull off a proposal soon, I can call in a few favors to help make the wedding of her dreams a reality. And then there's her dream trip, Italy. She's always wanted to go, and I've had the chance to travel there with clients before. Today, I went ahead and booked our plane tickets. I told her I landed a photography gig in March, and I want to bring her along, because I know how much going there would mean to her. I spent weeks considering where and how I'd propose, but I've finally decided. On the third day of our trip, I'll take her to Rimini for the day. Near sunset, I'll propose on the Ferris wheel there, one of the only places that checks every box for her idea of perfection. I would move heaven and earth to make things magical for her, because that's what she truly deserves. Looking back, I remember how panicked and unworthy I felt when we first started dating. I thought I was too damaged, that I wasn't good enough for someone as fantastic as her. I honestly believed there had to be some horrible twist of fate waiting for me, and I almost ran from happiness altogether. But I'm glad I forced myself to sit with those feelings and try anyway. I have never felt this loved, this fulfilled. She's the first person I don't second guess, no paranoia that she has some secret motive to be with me, no fear that any moment she'll find someone better. The truth is, if she wanted out, she could have it. She could be with anyone, but she chooses me, and I'm going to hold on to that for the rest of my life if I can. It hasn't left my mind that I wanted clear confirmation from her before planning this proposal. I'd never want to push someone into something so important without certainty and enthusiastic consent. I feel unbelievably lucky to have her, and there's no way I'll ever take that for granted. Final update. The day before we left, my guilt about the gig ate me alive. I suck at lying to her. I told her there was no client in Italy, that I bought the tickets because I wanted to give her the trip she's dreamed about and ask her a question I could only ask there. She didn't look surprised. She just smiled in that small, knowing way of hers and said, "I know." Apparently I have a very obvious secret squirrel face. We packed anyway. She threw a stack of vintage film cameras into her bag, because if you're going to be extra, I get to be extra too. Italy was everything I promised it would be. We lost a suitcase somewhere over the Atlantic and spent the first night buying emergency toothpaste and a sweater that said ciao in font size 300, but somehow even that was fun with her. On the third day, I took her to Rimini, her hand tucked into my jacket pocket, the Adriatic wind turning her cheeks pink. The boardwalk was quiet, off-season sleepy, all pale winter light and shuttered kiosks. We turned the corner, and my stomach dropped through the floor. The Ferris wheel was wrapped in tarps like a sleeping giant. No lights. No music. Just the creak of ropes and the slap of wind against canvas. I'd checked, I swear I had, weeks prior. Apparently Raya per Maggio means it opens in May. For a second I just stood there with a ring burning a hole in my pocket and the taste of panic thick in my mouth. Every old fear came back at once. The last time I'd wanted something this badly, it blew up in my face. I could feel that instinct, run, pull back, save yourself, rising like a tide. She squeezed my hand. "Hey," she said, soft, like we were in church. "We can make our own Ferris wheel." I almost laughed, because what does that even mean? But she was right. It didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be us. Rimini has this long pier that juts out into the water, Molo di Levante, and the sea was throwing itself against the stones like it wanted to climb onto shore. It wasn't sunset soft, it was wild and gray and alive. I set the tripod on the least wobbly bit of concrete, handed my phone to a fisherman with a face like leather and asked, in broken Italian and pantomime, if he could press a button when I waved. He nodded, tucked a cigarette behind his ear, and took his assignment with the gravity of a surgeon. I told her I'd planned something fancier, that I was sorry, that I wanted to give her a magic moment she'd talk about for 50 years. She looked at me like I was missing the point entirely. "This is magic," she said. "You're here." I didn't do a speech. I thought I would, but when I got on one knee, all the words I wrote in my head fell out of it and I was just a man in love on a cold pier in March. I told her that every day with her feels like choosing to live on purpose. That her laugh is home, that I spent so long bracing for the worst I forgot that sometimes life hands you the exact person you didn't think you were allowed to want. I opened the box and the ring caught the little bit of light the clouds were grudging us. She didn't let me get to the question, she just said yes, over and over, until her voice broke and we were both ridiculous. The fisherman applauded us like we were a winning soccer team, a seagull screamed its disapproval, some kid on a scooter did a loop and shouted augury. And I thought, okay, this is how a life starts. Then she said, okay, my turn, and pulled a tiny box out of the inside pocket of her jacket. I blinked at her. She bit her lip, suddenly shy in a way I have almost never seen. "I didn't want you to be the only one jumping," she said. "I want to choose you back, intentionally, with the same ceremony." Her ring for me was simple, a brushed gold band with a line of matte black through the center, clean and solid and exactly my taste in a way that made my chest ache. I put it on right there with the wind slapping our coats and her hair in my mouth and tears I'll never admit to in any other context. We walked back along the pier with our hands out like kids so we could look at our rings flash in the watery light and laugh at ourselves. Later, over pasta so perfectly al dente I could have cried, she confessed she'd been carrying that ring around for weeks because she had a feeling I'd try something in Italy. "You're predictable in the most adorable way," she said, and I had to hide my face in my hands because I was smiling too hard and the waiter was absolutely judging me. We took the train down to Rome the next morning and ran around like tourists, ate gelato twice in one day, got lost in Trastevere, kissed on bridges, did all the things. I took a picture of her in front of every fountain because why not claim the cliché if it belongs to you? We came home, jet-lagged and giddy, and told our families over takeout. My mom cried, her dad did that stoic nod men do when they want to cry but won't, her brother made a joke about finally winning the office pool. We curled up on the floor with a cheap bottle of Prosecco I'd smuggled back and the cat tried to drink from the glasses, because of course. I called in a favor with a friend who runs a venue outside the city, stone walls, trees that go gold in October, space for exactly the kind of fall ceremony she used to talk about like it was a fairy tale someone else got to have. We picked a date. She's designing the invitations with pressed autumn leaves, I'm making a ridiculous playlist for the reception and arguing with her about whether we're allowed to have 2 first dances because she wants one slow and one absolute chaos. She asked if we can write our own vows. I said only if she promises to keep it under 10 minutes because I have limits and also because I know she'll make me cry if she goes long. The honest part, 2 days after we got back, my ex reached out. "Just saw your photos, congrats" message that would have detonated me, once upon a time. I showed Chris immediately. No secrecy, no drama. She read it, shrugged, and asked if I wanted to block the number or just let it sit in the void. We sat on the kitchen floor and did it together. It felt like closing a door and gluing it shut. I slept like a dead thing that night for the first time in I don't know how long. We went back to the soup kitchen the next weekend like usual. She held an old man's hand when his tray shook and pretended not to notice me taking a photo of her doing it. That picture is on our fridge now, next to a postcard from Rimini with a Ferris wheel on it that we bought out of sheer stubbornness. We decided it's our tradition anyway. Next summer, we'll go back when it's actually open, ride it at sunset, and make our own symmetry. I used to think love was supposed to be a hurricane. Drama, intensity, the kind of fireworks that set your hair on fire. I'm learning it's also grocery lists and unplugged Ferris wheels and picking her up at the train station with a hot coffee because she told me her hands were cold an hour ago. It's choosing. It's doing small things loudly. Okay, one more update. Our wedding day woke up like it had been dared. I was in a hotel room trying to remember how to fold a pocket square without summoning a demon when my phone buzzed and our planner's voice came through with the kind of careful calm you use for wild animals and toddlers. A water main had gone rogue at the venue sometime around dawn. By the time someone noticed, the reception hall was ankle deep and the power was sulking in the corner. The fire department put up tape. The owner said phrases like "act of God" and "we'll make it right," and none of those phrases included today. I had that old reflex for half a breath, the one where I mentally fling myself through a window and just keep running. Chris was across the room in a robe, hair half pinned, sipping coffee like a person in a shampoo commercial who's never heard of stress. I held up the phone and mouthed the words. She blinked once, set her cup down, and said, "Cool. Let's go get married." It wasn't bravado. It was clarity. She grabbed her sneakers because the heels felt like a hate crime, stuffed bobby pins into a pocket like ammunition, and called Paula from the soup kitchen. We spend Saturdays there. Paula has keys and a gift for organized miracles. 20 minutes later we were in a rideshare with her dress in a garment bag across both our laps and my tie hanging around my neck like it was trying to escape. The driver asked if we were late to a party. Sort of, I said. We're moving it. The hall smelled like bleach and onions and the ghost of coffee. It should have felt wrong, but the moment we walked in, it felt like a heartbeat. Paula stood by the serving line like a general, waved a whisk at us, and set the troops in motion. Volunteers materialized out of thin air like we'd shouted assembly. The teenager who always pretends not to care showed up with a ladder. The guy who never says more than 3 words rolled out the big industrial mop like a sword. My florist rerouted her van and turned pantry cans into vases. The press leaves from our invitations turned into a backdrop because my mother, God bless her, began stealth taping them to butcher paper with the dedication of a forger. Someone found a box of twinkle lights and suddenly the soup line looked like a movie set. My best friend found the outlet that didn't trip the breaker and plugged in the speaker. The officiant came in her coat, shaking snow off her boots, and asked if we were ready to set a legal precedent for ceremony in the presence of 100 quarts of marinara. Chris vanished into the office with her makeup bag and came back 5 minutes later transformed, cheeks flushed from adrenaline instead of a stylist's brush, laces of her sneakers peeking out from under satin. Her dad swept the floor because he didn't know what else to do, and it gave him a job. My mom pressed my hands and said, "Breathe," which did not help but also helped. Mr. S., the older man whose tray had shaken months ago, who now calls me kiddo, showed up in his best jacket and pinned a paper corsage to his lapel like a dare. We got married between the steam table and the window that looks out onto the alley with the graffiti flower no one can bring themselves to paint over. We had 2 first dances because of course we did. We're nothing if not stubborn about joy. The first was slow and stupidly sweet and the sound from the single working speaker kept cutting in and out, so our rhythm was half us and half electricity, and somehow that made it better. The second was chaos. I don't remember what song it was because my brain was all confetti, but I remember my aunt doing something illegal with her knees and Chris's brother shouting the lyrics so loud the kitchen staff came out to watch and bang wooden spoons on metal like we'd hired a percussion section. We cut a sheet cake from the grocery store that Paula iced herself while pretending not to cry, and it tasted like victory and sugar and a little bit of bleach because that's what life tastes like when you do it right. Our vows were short because I had exacted a blood oath about time limits, but she destroyed me in under 4 minutes anyway. She said she would choose me out loud on Tuesdays and quietly on Thursdays when both of us forgot to put the laundry in the dryer. She promised to bring me coffee when my hands were cold without saying anything about it like it was an errand and not a sacrament. I said I would love her at sinks and on piers and in every small aisle where the good cereal hides. We both cried in a way that will haunt me on any recording forever. The dishwasher kicked on like an amen. And then, because the universe isn't subtle and maybe has a sense of humor that matches ours, someone burst in from the alley yelling that the Harvest Festival 2 blocks over had finally hauled in their rides. We walked outside to air that tasted like apples and pavement and there it was. A Ferris wheel popped up in a parking lot like a friendly UFO. It wasn't the Adriatic. It wasn't even elegant. It was orange and a little creaky and perfect. We looked at each other and laughed because at that point what else do you do? The operator let us cut the line when he saw the dress and the bouquet. A kid in a skeleton sweatshirt booed us but also gave us a thumbs up. At the top, you could see the soup kitchen roof and the line of our friends spilling onto the sidewalk with cups of coffee like they were part of the parade. The wheel stopped for a second, and there was that tiny pocket of quiet you only get when you're suspended between things. The operator looked up and cupped his hands and shouted something I didn't quite catch over the clatter, but it sounded close enough to augury that it bent the day back on itself into symmetry. My second shooter, who had sprinted the entire way because I called him with a please that sounded like a bark, got the photo. You can see her sneaker in the edge of her dress, my ring and her hand on my shoulder, the blur of lights and the soup kitchen sign in the bottom corner like a stamp. It lives on our fridge now next to the Rimini postcard and the donation confirmation because the venue refunded us and there was only one place that money could go. We didn't even have to say it out loud. We ate pasta catered by the Italian place down the street who saw my tux and Chris's hair and said, "We got you," and made enough food to feed a small town. We danced until the twinkle lights looked like meteors in my peripheral vision. The cat tried to get in the dress bag when we got home because she is an agent of chaos. We collapsed on our couch with shoes off and plates of leftover cake balanced on our knees and the kind of static silence that comes after a storm when you realize your house still stands and also you helped rebuild a few others in the process. I thought I'd been planning a wedding. What we actually planned, without meaning to, was proof that when the elaborate version of your dream gets soaked and taped off, the bones of it, yours and hers, hold. That magic will show up in borrowed rooms and parking lots, wearing ugly orange paint and a grin. That the life we're building is less about what we booked and more about who has keys and who shows up with a ladder, and who will stand on a chair to hang lights just because you asked. We're going back to the soup kitchen this weekend like we always do. Paula says we have to stop making everyone cry at work. Mr. S insists the dishwasher is our marriage therapist because it keeps you honest. He might be onto something. I keep catching myself looking at my ring in the reflection of the coffee pot, because I'm still that guy, and every time I do, the same thought lands and sits quietly in my chest like a cat. In son, I didn't know it could be like this. I didn't know it could be this loud and this ordinary at the same time. I didn't know that the Ferris wheel comes to you if you wait long enough and hang your own lights. Absolutely last update, I swear. The universe heard me say we're settled and said, bet. 2 months after the soup kitchen wedding, Paula called at 6 a.m., which is usually a time for ambulances or babies. Don't panic, she said, which is a sentence designed exclusively to create panic. The landlord was selling the building. 30 days notice. The kind of math that makes your stomach try to escape through your spine. She was already at a folding table with a legal pad and a pen like a weapon. I looked at Chris and watched her do that thing she does where she flips the internal switch from person to lightning rod. Cool, she said, and I believed her. Let's go buy a building. We had approximately $11 in some store credit at a craft shop, so that plan needed scaffolding. Which is when I remembered I know a small army of people who make impossible days happen for a living. I started calling. The florist, the venue, the DJ who saved our first dance from the breaker like he was defibrillating a heart, 3 caterers, a guy who knows permits like they're his cousins, a councilwoman who once ate lasagna at Paula's table after a ribbon cutting and cried into a napkin. Chris sat down with the design program and made a poster with pressed leaves and a Ferris wheel sketched in the corner for luck. We were going to throw a fundraiser/block party in a parking lot with one working outlet and a dream. The permit office said no 3 different ways and then maybe if in a 4th. Paula walked in with 3 volunteers, a tray of cookies, and the memory of every inspector's grandchild's name. By lunch we had a temporary use waiver and a promise that the noise complaint line would pretend not to know us for 24 hours. I called the Ferris wheel guy from the Harvest Festival because the world is a circle and so are we. He answered on the second ring and said, "Are you the wedding pier people?" Like we were cryptids he'd finally trapped. He had a gap in his schedule and a soft spot the shape of a bouquet. "I can give you Sunday," he said. "Don't tell nobody." We did not tell nobody, we told everybody. The teenager from the soup kitchen who pretends not to care showed up with a skeleton sweatshirt shoved under a blazer and a clipboard like a parole officer. My mother went feral in a good way and turned sheet cake into currency. Mr. S put on the jacket with the paper corsage still pinned to it and demanded to be in charge of the cash box because he was mean enough to fend off pirates. The florist turned pallets into a flower wall. Someone set up a face painting table and gave me eyebrows that suggested scandal. Bands played for free. The councilwoman stood on the back of a pickup and said things like anchor institution and food security, and I watched 100 people sign something that mattered. I kept bracing for the math to betray us. It didn't. It leapt. People crammed $20 bills into donation jars like their pockets were on fire. A baker showed up with 40 loaves and a check twice that number. A foundation we didn't know was watching called Paula on Monday and said they'd match whatever we raised if we could get a lease agreement on paper by Friday. The landlord, who had seemed like a villain in the morning, slick hair, slick shoes, slick excuses, turned out to be a man with a mortgage and a soft spot for his mother's ravioli. He gave us 60 days and first right of refusal. Paula cried in the office with her forehead on a coffee can. I took a photo of the way the light hit the labels and didn't show it to anyone because some moments are sacraments you don't post. We made a non-profit because you apparently cannot buy a building under the legal name Two Idiots with a Checklist. The board is a motley of soup kitchen lifers and my florist and a lawyer who does pro bono work so much his own mother scolds him. We signed a letter of intent in a room that smelled like lemon cleaner and Triumph. When I tell you Chris shook the landlord's hand like she was wrestling fate into a hug, I mean it. Somewhere in the middle of this, life peeled sideways like a stagehand yanking a backdrop. The skeleton sweatshirt kid, Kai, showed up late one night when we were restocking breakfast cereal for the week. He hovered in the doorway with his hood up like a cliché and said, "Paula?" And then didn't say anything else. If you've ever seen someone hold themselves together so hard their knuckles go white, you know the look. Paula did the warm, no blinking thing and got him a seat. He wouldn't meet her eyes, he kept one wrist pressed into his stomach like it was holding secrets down. The words came out in little pieces. He didn't want to go home. He didn't feel safe. He wasn't going to tell us why. He also wasn't going to sleep on a bench because it's cold and he's not made of stone. "I don't need, parents," he said, flinging the word like a dare. Chris said, "Cool," with that same even softness she uses when owners hand over skittish dogs. "Do you need a sandwich?" We did the only thing you can do when the universe throws a human at your chest like a bouquet. We called the number Paula keeps taped inside her wallet, the one for the host home program that partners with the city when teenagers have more courage than paperwork. There are steps, even in emergencies. There's a training. There are fingerprints. There is a home study where a woman named Linda comes into your apartment and opens your cabinets and asks how many knives you own and whether you intend to keep bleach on the floor. Chris scrubbed baseboards with a focus I have only previously seen on bomb squads. We rearranged the office/junk room into a bedroom with lamps that glow like the inside of a lantern. The cat took this as a personal affront and sat in the doorway like a gossip columnist. We passed and then the phone rang at 9:17 on a Wednesday while I was very seriously pretending to understand the tax forms for the nonprofit. "We have a placement," Linda said gently, as if she could see my heart through the line. "It's short term. You know him." We did. He came with a backpack and the kind of posture that says I will fight you if you try to be kind to me. We performed triage with pasta and the good cereal. "Pick a box," I told him in the aisle like a weirdo, because a person should get to pick something when their life feels like a coin flipped by someone else. He chose the off-brand chocolate ones and then pretended he didn't care when we bought two. He introduced himself to the cat and got scratched and pretended he didn't care about that either. The cat decided he was acceptable when he dropped a shred of turkey on the floor without looking at her. Truce achieved. He slept like a person who hasn't slept in weeks. We took turns pretending not to check on him. The dishwasher ran twice that night because none of us are experts yet and hot water felt like the most useful prayer. He didn't want to talk at breakfast. He ate 3 bowls and said the cereal was fine and also disgusting and then asked if we could get the kind with the little freeze-dried marshmallows next time. Progress comes in weird flavors. It wasn't a movie, there wasn't one big conversation that solved anything. There were caseworker visits and school enrollment forms and one spectacularly bad night where he told us to mind our business and I told him this was literally our business now and we kind of glared at each other across the kitchen until Chris slid a glass of water between us like a white flag and said, "We take 5 to inhale and start over." He didn't roll his eyes, which is how I knew he was listening. He hates the word placement like it's an implant. He hates Foster because the syllables feel like static in his mouth. We don't say either unless we have to. We say your room and our Tuesday plan and do you want in on the grocery list and sometimes no when he tests the elasticity of the rules like he's trying to bounce a quarter off them. He sat through the nonprofit meeting and watched the adults with his head cocked like a fox and then asked 3 questions that cut right to the bone. Later he admitted he didn't ask questions in class because teachers always look too surprised, and he hates being a magic trick. The day we signed the lease, our lease, the nonprofit's lease, Paula's keys legally ours to duplicate without asking permission, the landlord shook Kai's hand like this was a normal part of a teenager's life. "You're looking out for them, right?" he said to us without moving his eyes off the kid. "He's looking out for us," Chris said, and the landlord nodded as if they'd decided something I was a beat late to. We took Kai out for pizza because that's what you do when the world tilts and lands upright. He ordered something with too many toppings and ate the olives off the rest of our slices like a raccoon. We walked home under a sky that looked like it had been stitched up and re-sewn with gold thread where the clouds cracked open. We went to the fair the next weekend because apparently this is our brand now, and because the Ferris wheel had become a punctuation mark the universe kept putting on all our run-on sentences. The same operator was there, or at least a cousin, same grin, same hat, same willingness to be charmed by a good story and a ring. He didn't make us cut the line this time. He pointed to a car halfway up and said, "That one has the best view of the church steeple and the bad graffiti, which is exactly how you sell me on anything." Kai tried to pretend this was dumb. He tried to pretend the idea of being lifted into the sky by a machine built from bolts someone's cousin tightened with a wrench in a hurry wasn't perfect. At the top, the city spilled out in squares and ribbons. You could see the soup kitchen roof, the window where the twinkle lights had been, the slice of alley with the flower that refuses repaint. Kai looked over, and his face did that unclenching thing that makes your chest ache in a way you'd help a stranger carry a washing machine just to make it stop. "Okay," he said. "This doesn't suck." Back on the ground, he asked if we were going again. We were, because choose joy loudly. He doesn't hold hands. We don't make him. He does loop his arm through the bar like he's bracing the whole wheel, and I have the irrational thought that maybe he is. I caught our reflection in the greasy sheen of the metal, 3 people in a row, rings flashing, hoodie string swinging, the cheap lights obliging us by pretending to be stars. I took a photo because that's my job and also my compulsion. It came out slightly crooked, my favorite kind. At home, he leaves his shoes under the coffee table instead of by the door, and I pretend not to care until I care, and then he pretends not to notice when he remembers on his own. The cat now sleeps in the doorway of his room like a sentry. He told Paula the dishwasher is still our therapist, but that sometimes his socks do the heavy lifting. He asked if he could help on Saturdays, like we hadn't already saved him a seat. He bussed trays next to Mr. S and didn't correct him when Mr. S called him kiddo, which, in this house, counts as intimacy. He stood on a chair to tape a sign that said "Welcome home" over the steam table because someone donated it and it felt important to use. We're not saints. We get tired and stupid and say the wrong thing. I have panicked in the cereal aisle because there are 30 varieties of crunch and none of them feel like the right one. Chris has sat on the floor with her head in her arms while the cat tried to burrow into her ponytail. Kai has slammed 1 door and closed 4 quietly, and that ratio feels like progress we could enter into a spreadsheet if we were those people. On Thursday, my ex texted again from a new number with an apology that read like it had been run through a washing machine. I handed my phone to Chris on the couch without commentary. She read it and handed it to Kai. He scrolled, snorted, and said, "Blocked." We did it together, like before, only this time with someone between us who is learning that you can end things on purpose without breaking everything else. We signed the papers on the building last week. The money hit the account and went back out in a whoosh that made me lightheaded and then calm. The landlord came by with a plant and a shrug and a story about his mother that made me cry into a rag, again, because edging toward middle age has turned me into a walking humidifier. We are going to paint the office an offensively cheerful color. The donation confirmation lives on the fridge next to the Rimini postcard and the wedding Ferris wheel photo and now the crooked picture of us under cheap lights. There is a blueprint taped to the wall with plans for a bigger pantry and a door that doesn't stick when it rains. The councilwoman sent an email full of exclamation points that looked like confetti. Paula wrote our names very small in the thank you bulletin because she knows how to make you cry by being precise. Sometimes, late, when the house is loud and ordinary, I catch myself in the coffee pot again, ring flashing, Caesar dressing on my knuckle because I can't be trusted with bottles. I keep thinking about how I used to measure love by weather events. Hurricanes. Lightning. I like this better, the steady machinery of a Ferris wheel, up and down, over and over, no less miraculous for being predictable, held together by bolts tightened by people who show up because you asked and because you asked nicely, and sometimes because you fed them sheet cake. I didn't know you could build a life out of block parties and legal pads and teenagers who pretend not to care and then ask if you'll be at the game on Friday. I didn't know the Ferris wheel would keep finding us, or maybe we keep finding it, or maybe once you say yes loud enough, yes starts echoing. Either way, we keep getting on. We keep coming back down. We keep paying for the ride and waving to the guy with the hat like we're regulars, because I guess we are.